It's such a shame you chose daisies for the centerpieces, Evelyn remarked, tracing the edge of a white anello bloom with a perfectly manicured nail. They'll be drooping by dessert. I told Marcus you should have gone with lilies. I tightened my grip on the clipboard, pasting on a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Daisies are my favorite, and they're in season, so they're nice and fresh. Evelyn lifted one eyebrow, lips pursed. Well, it's your party, I suppose, she said airily. Still, I maintain that my suggestion of the downtown rooftop lounge would have been far more elegant than your front lawn. We wanted something more personal, I replied. Something that felt like us. Her eyes flicked toward me, narrowing ever so slightly. Yes, you've always had unconventional taste. My name is Naomi Trent. I'm 36, and today marks my 5th wedding anniversary with Marcus. For the last 4 months, I've been planning this anniversary soiree in our modest front yard in Asheville, North Carolina, complete with local catering, soft jazz, and twinkle lights strung between trees. 30 of our closest friends and family are expected to arrive in just a couple hours. I wanted everything to be perfect, a true celebration of the life Marcus and I have built together. But one thing threatened to unravel all my careful planning: Evelyn Trent, my mother-in-law. She arrived 5 hours early, offering to help, which in her language means nitpick, undermine, and gently remind me of how she would have done everything differently. I just think it's strange you didn't ask for my input on the menu, she continued, flipping through the printout I'd left on the kitchen table. Marcus adores my cocoa vin. He asks for it every birthday. For the 3rd time, the caterer specializes in Southern Appalachian cuisine, I said, keeping my tone even. And Marcus personally approved the entire menu. She waved a dismissive hand. He's always been too agreeable for his own good. Hates conflict, bless him. That's why he lets you make all these choices. I glanced at the clock. 2 hours and 23 minutes until guests arrived. I still need to finish setting up the drink station and take my medication before I get dressed. Oh, that, Evelyn said, her voice dripping with faux concern. It must be such a burden for Marcus, having to navigate your condition all the time. I turned and walked inside, biting my tongue so hard it might have drawn blood. I was running on fumes, physically and emotionally, and I couldn't afford to lose control now. In the kitchen, I took a deep breath, then reached for the small amber bottle I'd left by the coffee maker that morning. My medication, vital for managing the severe inflammation and fatigue caused by my autoimmune disorder, was something I couldn't skip. Especially not today. I shook the bottle. The sound was off. Lighter. I frowned and opened it. Inside were small, unfamiliar white pills, round instead of my usual oblong ones. Confused, I dumped a few onto a napkin and leaned closer. My stomach turned to ice. These weren't my meds. These were sugar pills. My hands shook as the reality sank in. Someone had swapped out my medication. Someone who'd spent the day in my house. Someone who had always treated my health as a character flaw, a weakness that made me undeserving of her precious son. Evelyn. Marcus and I met 5 years ago at a charity auction where I was managing logistics, and he was volunteering on behalf of his architectural firm. We hit it off over a shared love of Frank Lloyd Wright and craft beer. 3 months later, we were inseparable. A year later, we were married at a cozy mountain lodge with just 40 guests. Evelyn's disapproval had been loud and clear from day one. She had another woman in mind for Marcus, the daughter of her oldest friend, a cardiologist with a PhD, a trust fund, and a townhome in Atlanta. Against that comparison, my small but thriving event planning business was apparently laughable. Just glorified party planning, I'd once overheard Evelyn say to one of her friends, loud enough that I was meant to hear. Not exactly a stable future. When Marcus proposed, her campaign to break us up turned subtle but persistent. Snide comments. Backhanded compliments. And now, this. But she underestimated me. I wasn't just planning a party. I was building a life. And tonight, I was going to protect it with everything I had. Her criticisms intensified over time. Evelyn questioned the legitimacy of my autoimmune disorder, the condition I'd been managing since college. She never came out and called me a liar, but her raised eyebrows and passive-aggressive comments spoke volumes. "You always look so healthy, Naomi," she'd say, her tone saccharine. "It must be exhausting, though, being so sick all the time." She once, accidentally, included shrimp in a pasta dish for a family dinner, knowing full well I had a severe shellfish allergy. When I broke out in hives and spent the night with an EpiPen in hand and antihistamines coursing through my veins, she just smiled and said, "Oh dear, I must have mixed up the packages at the store." Evelyn was also a master of the ex-girlfriend monologue. No gathering went by without a glowing reference to Marcus's high school sweetheart Lauren, who now ran her own dermatology clinic in Atlanta, or college flame Christine, who married a state senator. "Such accomplished young women," Evelyn would sigh. "Marcus had such a good eye back then." And yet, in spite of it all, Marcus and I built a good life together. He believed in me and supported my growing business every step of the way. When I landed my first big out-of-state client, he brought home champagne and takeout. When he made partner at his architectural firm, we celebrated with a weekend in the Smoky Mountains. Together, we bought and restored a charming 1920s craftsman bungalow in the Montford Historic District of Asheville. It was the perfect blend of our styles, his love for clean lines and modern finishes, my fondness for warm wood tones and vintage touches. Evelyn hated every inch of it. "It's too cold," she sniffed during her first visit. The Trent family has always preferred tradition. "This place, it doesn't feel like home." Marcus always tried to smooth things over with humor. "She just doesn't like change," he'd tell me, wrapping his arms around me at night. "She'll come around. She just needs time." 3 years later, I was still waiting. If anything, Evelyn had only grown more cunning. Her snide comments were now reserved for moments when Marcus was out of the room, her attacks veiled behind polite smiles. Still, for this anniversary party, I had tried to build a bridge. I included little touches just for her favorite white roses in the guest bathroom, her preferred bourbon behind the bar, a reserved table with the best garden view. I even invited her to arrive early, hoping she'd feel more involved. But now, staring down at the sugar pills that had replaced my medication, I realized I'd been naive. She hadn't come early to help. She'd come to sabotage. My heart raced as I rifled through my purse until I found the small emergency pill case I always carried. Thank God I never left home without it. I dry swallowed the correct dose and braced my hands against the counter, breathing slowly until the panic settled into something cold and clear. Should I confront her right away? Tell Marcus? Cancel the party? No. That would be giving her exactly what she wanted. The show would go on, but I was done pretending I didn't see what she was doing. Upstairs, I finished my makeup and twisted my auburn hair into an elegant updo, pinning it in place with practiced ease. The emerald green dress I'd chosen hugged my figure just right and shimmered softly under the light. My smile in the mirror was faint, but firm. I was ready. Downstairs, the kitchen buzzed with energy. The caterers were plating miniature crab cakes and tomato tarts. The bartender was slicing citrus for cocktails. Out on the patio, strings of fairy lights flickered as dusk began to fall over the garden. Everything was perfect. Or it would have been, if not for the silent weight of what I now knew. I found Evelyn in the dining room, rearranging my place cards. "I moved the Hendersons closer to us," she said without glancing up. "They're practically family, unlike those work acquaintances you insisted on inviting." "The seating was intentional," I said calmly. "Marcus and I planned it together." She looked up with a shrug. "He won't mind. He always enjoyed Catherine Henderson's company. They dated for a while, remember?" "Oh, I remembered." Evelyn reminded me constantly. "I found something strange earlier," I said, my voice light but firm. My medication had been replaced with sugar pills. Evelyn didn't flinch, but a faint flush crept up her neck. "How careless of you to mix them up," she said smoothly. "I didn't mix anything up," I replied, holding her gaze. And in that moment, I saw it. The flicker of fear. My pills were deliberately switched. Evelyn straightened, meeting my gaze with a calm, cold smile. "That's a serious accusation, Naomi," she said smoothly. "Perhaps your condition is affecting your judgment. Autoimmune issues can impact cognitive function, can't they?" The calculated cruelty in her voice stole my breath. This wasn't just passive-aggressive sniping, this was dangerous. She had tampered with medication I needed. "Why do you hate me so much?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Her smile tightened. "Hate is such a strong word," she said lightly. "I simply recognize that you're not right for my son. Eventually, he'll see it too. We've been happily married for 5 years. 5 years is nothing," she replied, as if she were commenting on the weather. A fleeting moment. Marcus needs someone who will enhance his life, not complicate it with health problems and frivolous career choices. Then, as if that settled everything, she turned back to the table and resumed rearranging the place cards to her liking. Something shifted inside me. A terrible clarity. Evelyn wasn't just a difficult woman stuck in her old ways. She was dangerous. She had been working quietly, relentlessly, to chip away at my marriage, my confidence, my health. And she wasn't going to stop. "Maybe," she murmured, half to herself, "you'll finally leave him." I stood frozen. Her words hung in the air like poison. She hadn't just been trying to make me uncomfortable today. She had hoped I'd suffer a medical episode. Something visible. Something traumatic. Something that might shake Marcus's faith in me, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. She wanted to fracture us from the inside out. Before I could speak again, the front door opened, and Marcus's familiar voice broke the tension like a dropped glass. "Hey." The florist just delivered more greenery. "Where do you want it?" Evelyn's demeanor flipped in an instant. She glided past me, her expression warm and motherly. "In the kitchen, darling." "Everything looks wonderful," she cooed as she passed, brushing a hand over his shoulder with theatrical affection. But as she glanced back at me, her eyes flashed a message loud and clear. This is far from over. And she was right. But it wouldn't end the way Evelyn thought. I forced a smile as Marcus walked into the dining room. "You look stunning," he said, kissing my cheek. "Everything okay? You seem a little tense." "Just pre-party nerves," I replied smoothly. "Would you check that the bartender has enough ice? I need to run through a couple things with the caterer." As soon as he disappeared toward the backyard, I slipped into the guest bathroom, where Evelyn had left her oversized black purse near the sink. I paused only briefly before opening it. My hands trembled slightly as I searched the inner compartments. There, tucked into a zippered pocket, was my original prescription bottle, oval, peach-colored pills still inside. I pulled out my phone, snapped a clear photo of the bottle, then carefully returned everything to its place, ensuring not a single strap or zipper looked disturbed. I had proof now. Real proof. Not just my word against hers. I stepped back into the hum of the party prep, determined to keep my distance from Evelyn while watching her every move. She lingered around the bar for several minutes, gesturing toward the bottles and murmuring something to the bartender. When she finally walked away, I approached him casually. "My mother-in-law can be particular," I said, offering a light smile. "What was she asking about?" "The champagne," he said, rolling his eyes slightly. "Wanted to make sure we're using the French bottle she brought, not the domestic one you listed. Said she has the refined palate in the family." I nodded, remembering her fuss over it. Dom Perino, a rare vintage she'd insisted was the only proper choice for a celebration. It was the one thing I'd let her handle without argument, partly to give her something to feel in control of. "Where did she put it?" I asked. "In the cooler by the bar," he replied. "She had me stash it in the back so it wouldn't get mishandled." I thanked him and walked away slowly, a pit forming in my stomach. Now I had to wonder, what else had Evelyn tampered with? "Where did you put it?" I asked. "In the wine cooler, left side," the bartender said. "She told me it's only for her and a few select guests." My suspicion deepened. When he turned to assist another guest, I quietly opened the cooler and located the distinctive Dom Perino bottle. A small piece of blue tape had been placed near the base, a subtle but intentional mark. Evelyn's version of claiming ownership, no doubt. I didn't dare open it yet, but I made a mental note. I'd watch closely when it was served. The first guests arrived at 7, and soon the garden was alive with music, laughter, and conversation. Warm string lights glowed above the tables, casting a soft charm over the evening. I floated through the crowd with practiced ease, smiling, offering drinks, checking the buffet. But all the while, I kept Evelyn in my peripheral vision. She held court near the koi pond, effortlessly captivating a group of Marcus's colleagues with her rehearsed stories, tales from his childhood that just happened to exclude any influence I might have had on his adult success. At one point, I caught a snippet of her conversation with Marcus's boss. Of course, the Hendersons' daughter would have been the more conventional choice, Evelyn was saying. She's just been made head of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. But Marcus always had a soft spot for creative types. I clenched my jaw and kept walking, reminding myself not to take the bait. That's what she wanted, drama, so she could look like the victim. As dinner neared, Evelyn found me in the kitchen, her voice syrupy as she offered to help with the final touches. "I noticed you took your medication after all," she murmured, not even bothering to mask her condescension. "How fortunate you had extras." "I always carry backups," I replied evenly, "given that my condition is quite serious." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, your condition. How convenient. It never seems to stop you when there's a party to plan or attention to be gained." Before I could respond, she continued, "I understand if this is all too much for you. No one would blame you if you needed to lie down. I'd be happy to handle the hosting." To an outsider, it might have sounded generous. But I knew better. It was just another attempt to remove me from the evening. From my own anniversary celebration. "I feel perfectly fine," I said with a tight smile. "But thank you for your concern." Her expression stiffened briefly before smoothing into that signature pleasant mask she wore like armor. Just then, Marcus entered the kitchen. "There you are," Evelyn said sweetly. "I was just telling Naomi how lovely everything looks. I've offered to take over if she's feeling overwhelmed." "Naomi never gets overwhelmed," Marcus said proudly, sliding his arm around my waist. "That's why she's the best event planner in Asheville." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, well, it's nearly time for dinner. Shall we direct the guests to their seats?" As she turned and walked away, Marcus leaned in and whispered, "Everything okay between you two?" I hesitated. "Just the usual. Nothing I can't handle." But as we followed her toward the dining tables, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was brewing. Dinner, to my relief, unfolded beautifully. Guests raved about the locally sourced menu, laughing between bites of trout and sweet potato puree. The wine pairings were spot on. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe maybe, the worst had passed. Until I saw Evelyn speaking intently to the bartender again. He looked uncertain, almost apologetic, before reluctantly heading to the cooler and retrieving her marked bottle of champagne. My heart skipped. I set down my glass and made my way over, arriving just as he was easing the cork free. "Is there a problem?" I asked casually. "No, ma'am," he said. "Mrs. Trent just requested her champagne be opened now, said it needs time to breathe before the toasts." I smiled, lifting a hand. "I'll take care of that, thanks. We're still about 20 minutes from the toasts, and I need to talk to you about the dessert wine pairings anyway." He nodded and stepped away toward the kitchen. Left alone with the bottle, I examined it closely. The blue tape was there, confirming it was Evelyn's chosen vintage. But something about it felt off. My instincts kicked in. I raised the bottle slightly and discreetly inhaled. A strange scent. Sharp. Almost chemical. And definitely not champagne. But I detected nothing unusual, yet my instincts screamed that something was off. In a split-second decision, I swapped Evelyn's marked bottle with an identical one from our own collection. If my suspicions proved unfounded, no harm was done. She'd never know the difference. And if I was right, then both bottles would eventually reveal the truth. After the swap, I set Evelyn's bottle aside in a quiet corner and rejoined the bustling table just as the main course was being cleared from the garden. I caught sight of Evelyn watching me with that all-too-familiar calculating look. She raised her water glass slightly in my direction, almost as if toasting me, before turning her attention back to her dinner companions. When dessert was served, Marcus stood to begin the anniversary toasts. The bartender circulated with glasses of champagne, including the bottle I'd discreetly swapped out for Evelyn's marked selection. As he reached her table, Evelyn paused, deliberately checking the bottom of the bottle for the small piece of blue tape she had used as her signature mark. Only then did she allow him to pour, a satisfied smile curving her lips. Marcus raised his glass. "To my incredible wife, Naomi, who makes every day an adventure," he declared. 5 years of marriage feels like just the beginning of our journey." The guests murmured their appreciation as they sipped the champagne. I forced a smile as I watched Evelyn take a deliberate sip from her glass, her eyes never leaving mine. I was about to dismiss my growing suspicions when, suddenly, Marcus's college roommate, Ben, sprang to his feet. Clutching his stomach, he stammered, I'm so sorry," before he bolted toward the house. Within moments, 2 other guests from Evelyn's side of the table showed similar distress, excusing themselves hastily. All had drunk from the regular champagne, the one I'd swapped out, not from Evelyn's special bottle that I had set aside. Evelyn's expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion as she took another sip, clearly expecting something to happen when nothing did. Her brow furrowed slightly. "Is everything all right?" I asked her innocently. "Perfectly fine," she replied, though the tight grip on her glass betrayed her. It was then that the pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. Evelyn hadn't tampered with her own cherished bottle at all. She'd deliberately spiked the regular champagne meant for everyone else. And by some cruel twist of fate, it had been served at her end of the table first, targeting her preferred guests rather than me. Her plan, it seemed, was to claim food poisoning or an allergic reaction, conveniently straining our marriage under the chaos of multiple sick guests. But as I looked at the bottle of her special champagne that I had safely set aside, a darker possibility nagged at me. Had she prepared a backup plan? Was there something in that bottle intended specifically for me? I glanced up, catching Evelyn's eyes again. The practiced mask had slipped entirely, revealing a seething hatred so raw it took my breath away. This woman, my husband's mother, wasn't merely trying to drive me away. She wanted to destroy me. In that moment, I knew I had to act decisively to end the war she'd waged not just tonight, but throughout every future celebration and every ordinary day in between. As the affected guests began returning one by one, looking pale but slowly recovering, I moved quietly among them, ensuring everyone had water and offering soft apologies for what I described as an unfortunate food sensitivity triggered by one of the appetizers. All the while, Evelyn sat at her table, her eyes darting toward me with mounting frustration. It was clear her plan had gone awry. Marcus was busy chatting with his boss, giving me a brief window to breathe. I kept my eyes on Evelyn as she fidgeted with her glass, visibly agitated now that her scheme was unraveling. I walked over to the bar area, where the bartender was tidying up after the toast. I knew I needed to secure more evidence before taking any further steps. Quietly, I approached him and asked, "Did you notice anything unusual with the regular champagne tonight?" He hesitated, then nodded. "The bottle we served from wasn't one of our usual stock. It looked like it came from your private collection. And there was something off about it, a faint chemical scent, almost like disinfectant." My heart pounded. That confirmed my worst suspicions. Evelyn had tampered with the batch meant for the guests. I needed to confront her, but not yet. Timing was everything. I had to wait until the chaos subsided, until Marcus was fully engaged elsewhere, and until I had all the proof I needed. Glancing back at the set-aside bottle, I whispered to myself, "What did you plan, Evelyn?" My mind raced, plotting the next steps to protect our guests and myself from further harm. I had to ensure that tonight's celebration, our anniversary, wouldn't be marred by her calculated sabotage. And more importantly, I had to stop her before her dangerous vendetta escalated any further. As the evening progressed, I resolved to keep a close eye on Evelyn, determined that her malicious plans would not win. Tonight, I wasn't just fighting for my reputation or my health, I was fighting for the sanctity of our life together. I approached the bartender again. The champagne we set aside earlier, could you pour a glass just for Mrs. Trent? I asked quietly. She mentioned the other bottle doesn't taste right to her. Of course, he replied, retrieving Evelyn's original bottle, the one I'd suspected might contain something unpleasant, perhaps meant for the general guests. I carried the fresh glass across the garden to Evelyn myself. I noticed you weren't enjoying the champagne, I said with a warm smile. This is from your special bottle, the one with your blue marker. Her eyes sparked with recognition, and she took the glass with a satisfied nod. How thoughtful, she purred. This vintage is exceptional. Wasted on most palates, but perfect for a true connoisseur. A toast, then, I offered, raising my own glass of the regular champagne. To family. She clinked her glass against mine and took a long, deliberate sip, clearly savoring what she believed was her carefully selected, untouched champagne. I watched her closely. My mind raced with possibilities. What had she put in it? And how long would it take to work? I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, Evelyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She pressed a hand to her stomach, her expression tightening. A flash of panic darted across her face. "Excuse me," she muttered, standing abruptly. "I need to." She didn't finish her sentence. She turned and hurried toward the house, her heels clicking unevenly on the garden path. Marcus looked up from a conversation with a guest. "Is Mom okay?" "Probably just needed the restroom," I said calmly. "The toast is about to continue." Our close friend David stood, glass in hand, and began his speech, an honest, heartfelt tribute to our marriage, peppered with memories and laughter. I smiled and nodded in all the right places, but my eyes flicked occasionally toward the house. 10 minutes passed. No sign of Evelyn. "I should check on Mom," Marcus said, concern creeping into his voice. "I'll go," I offered quickly. "You should stay with our guests." Upstairs, I found the bathroom door shut tight. I knocked gently. "Evelyn, are you all right?" A pause. Then her voice, tight and strained. "Go away. Should I call a doctor?" I asked, feigning concern. "Was it something you ate or drank?" There was another pause. Then the door cracked open just enough to reveal Evelyn's pale, ashen face and wild eyes. "You knew," she hissed. "You switched the bottles." I held her gaze, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm not sure what you mean. Are you suggesting someone tampered with the champagne? That would be not only cruel, but potentially dangerous, wouldn't it?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. We both knew exactly what she had done. "This isn't over," Evelyn spat, her voice weak but full of venom. "Actually," I said softly, "it is." I took a breath, then added, "I found my medication in your purse. I have photos." I also kept samples of both champagne bottles. If anything like this ever happens again, if you ever try to sabotage my health, my marriage, or even just a dinner party, I'll go to Marcus with everything. Do you understand me? Evelyn's face contorted with fury, but before she could respond, another wave of nausea overtook her. The door slammed shut with a hollow thud. "I'll let Marcus know you're not feeling well," I called through the door. "Such a shame you'll miss the rest of the celebration." As I walked away, I heard what might have been a sob of frustration behind the door. For the first time since meeting Evelyn, I felt something close to pity. How small and hollow her life must be to focus so much energy on destroying someone else's happiness. Back in the garden, I found Marcus near the string-lit arbor, scanning the crowd. "Is Mom okay?" he asked, worry creasing his brow. "Food sensitivity, I think," I replied smoothly. "She said not to worry, just needs some time alone." He nodded slowly. "She's been a little off tonight." I touched his arm. "Let's not let it ruin anything." And we didn't. With Evelyn absent, the celebration took on a lighter tone, like a pressure valve had been quietly released. Laughter flowed more freely. Stories were shared. Glasses clinked in genuine joy. It was everything I'd hoped it would be: joyful, intimate, and free of shadows. A true celebration of the life Marcus and I had built together. And for the first time in a long while, I truly believed Evelyn's hold over us had finally broken. Together, and for once, no one was trying to sabotage it. Evelyn remained sequestered in the upstairs bathroom through the toasts, the cake cutting, and even our first dance beneath the twinkling garden lights. By the time our closest friends began preparing to leave, she'd been missing from the evening for nearly 2 hours. I made sure the caterers boxed up a generous slice of our lemon raspberry anniversary cake for her, carefully announcing the gesture loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Just in case my poor mother-in-law is still feeling under the weather, I said sweetly. Marcus went to check on her just as the quartet began our final requested song. When he returned, he looked unsettled. "She's coming down," he whispered. "But she's insisting someone tampered with her drink." Right on cue, Evelyn appeared at the edge of the garden, standing just beyond the warm reach of the string lights. Her once immaculate hair now hung limp around her shoulders, and her makeup, normally applied with surgical precision, was smudged despite a clear attempt to fix it. Her eyes locked onto mine with undisguised hatred. I tightened my grip on Marcus's hand and offered a soft, concerned smile. I think the heat and excitement might have been too much for her. As she stepped forward, I moved to meet her, holding the small cake box between us like a peace offering. "Feeling better?" I asked, loud enough for the few lingering guests to hear. "We saved some cake for you." "You did this," Evelyn hissed under her breath. "You switched the champagne." "You knew." "Knew what, Evelyn?" I replied with quiet innocence. "That you marked your special bottle? Or that you tampered with the regular one, the one that made Ben and the Johnsons sick?" Her face drained of what little color remained. She realized what I already knew. If she accused me directly, she'd have to explain how she knew which bottle had been swapped. She would have to explain why she had marked a bottle in the first place. And that wouldn't end well for her. "Mom?" Marcus asked, concern deepening. "What's going on?" Evelyn hesitated, visibly torn between her thirst for vengeance and her instinct for self-preservation. "Nothing," she said finally, voice flat. "I'm just not feeling well." "Such a shame you missed most of the party," I said, gently handing her the box. "Especially after you arrived so early to help." The word help lingered in the air between us, heavy with unspoken accusation. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the cake. "Perhaps next time," I added, my voice silk-soft, "you'll be able to enjoy the whole celebration without any unexpected interruptions." Her lips tightened into a thin smile. "Yes, next time." But we both knew there wouldn't be a next time. At least not one where she had any control. I had one. As the final guests drifted off and the catering crew began packing up, Evelyn announced that she'd be leaving instead of staying overnight, as originally planned. "I think it's best if I go home," she said stiffly. Clearly I'm not well. Marcus, still blissfully unaware of the battle that had been fought around him all evening, insisted on driving her. I kissed his cheek. "I'll handle things here," I said. "Take care of your mom." Once they were gone, I got to work. I collected everything, my photos of the pills in Evelyn's purse, the sealed sample of the tampered champagne, and the newest addition, security camera footage from our backyard showing Evelyn hovering near the bar, handling the champagne bottles when she thought no one was watching. I uploaded everything to a secure folder in my cloud drive. Then, for good measure, I sent myself an email with the subject line, "Insurance, Evelyn Trent / anniversary party incident." She didn't need to know exactly what evidence I had. Just that it existed, and could be used if necessary. When Marcus returned, I was curled up on our porch swing, watching the last of the garden cleanup. The lights still glowed, casting soft patterns on the grass. It was peaceful, finally. "Mom says she's never coming to another event you organize," he said, collapsing beside me with a sigh. "What really happened tonight?" I rested my head on his shoulder. "Let's just say your mother and I reached an understanding." He laughed lightly. "That sounds ominous." "It's actually liberating," I replied, a small smile playing at my lips. "I think we'll have a lot more peace moving forward. A much more peaceful relationship going forward." That's how Marcus described it the next morning, oblivious to the quiet war that had finally reached its ceasefire on my terms. 2 days later, a stiff note arrived in our mailbox, written on Evelyn's monogram stationery. The cursive script was sharp and formal, devoid of warmth. She was regretfully declining our invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, citing prior commitments, a phrase vague enough to mean anything but clear enough to say, "Don't expect me." The following week, Marcus received a group text from his mother announcing her plans to spend Christmas in Europe. A little solo reset, she called it. Time to see Vienna in the snow. It would be her first holiday away from him in his entire life. Marcus blinked at the message, surprised but not heartbroken. "Well, she always said she wanted to go to Europe," he said, setting his phone down. I simply smiled and nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. Later, I pinned her Thanksgiving note to the corner of our kitchen bulletin board, just above a list of local florists and below a photo from the anniversary party, Marcus and I mid-laugh, his arm around me, string lights glowing in the background. A snapshot of genuine joy. I looked at the note, then at the photo. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about explosive showdowns or dramatic confrontations. It's quieter than that. It's about shifting the balance, changing the rules of engagement, winning the war by making sure there's no battlefield left. Evelyn had chosen exile rather than face the fallout. She wouldn't risk being caught in another of her own traps. Not when I had the proof. Not when she finally understood what I was capable of when pushed far enough. And just like that, our future celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays would be exactly as I always dreamed. Joyful, safe, undisturbed, perfectly peaceful, without Evelyn's shadow stretching across the table or poisoning the wine. Just as I had planned all along. If you've made it this far, thank you for standing with me through an evening that nearly unraveled everything I've built. It wasn't just an anniversary party. It was a turning point. And I didn't come out of it unscathed, but I came out stronger. If my story struck a chord with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, have you ever faced someone who tried to undermine your peace, your health, or your happiness? How did you rise above it? To those who've supported me from the start, thank you for believing that grace and strength can coexist. Your encouragement matters more than you know. And if you're just joining me, welcome. I hope my story reminds you that standing your ground doesn't always require shouting. Sometimes it takes patience, strategy, and the quiet certainty that your truth will outlast their lies. Here's the lesson I hope you take with you. Protect your peace fiercely. Whether it's a boundary with a toxic in-law or the courage to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, listen to that voice inside. You don't need to be cruel to be powerful. You don't need to stoop to their level to show you're not afraid. Sometimes, walking away from chaos is the boldest move you can make. Other times, like I learned, you have to face it, expose it, and then lock the door behind it. So here's my call to you. Support those who are quietly surviving storms. Celebrate the ones who keep smiling while rebuilding their peace. And most importantly, become the kind of person who chooses truth over comfort and love over control. Because you deserve a life that feels like a celebration, not a battlefield. And you're stronger than you think.